to that end, I would love to know who I'm speaking to, because I know there are so many different roles in this room. So I kind of want to get an idea of how many of you are involved in a customer success role in your organization. Yay, I love you guys. Okay, that's cool. How many of you are involved in a product manager, product development type of a role? Very cool. That's very cool. And then how many of you are like the executives that want reporting on everything? Anybody? You are? So kind of getting an idea, one of the first things I want to ask you guys, I've got some stuff to share with you guys, a little bit about how we're using Pendo at Gainsight, and a little bit about the new face of what we're seeing in trends and insights for customer success. But I wanted to start and get some ideas if any of you have burning questions about customer success. Anyone? Everybody's like quiet. Yes? How do you sell customer success to executive in a traditional organization that is not SaaS? Is that the question? Great question. In fact, I'll talk a little bit about it, but remind me of Crossing the Chasm and Jeffrey Marsh. So I'll share a little bit more about that too. Anybody else?
Your organization is customer success also the same as onboarding, or is that and training, or is that a different thing?
You are brilliant, because customer success, what we're learning is customer success used to be kind of like a function or a department. And what we're starting to see, and that's what I brought some data to share with you guys today, is that customer success is spanning across the organization. So it's really exciting to see what we're seeing in large enterprise companies. And in fact, really my role, I'm the director of services solutions, being able to go into large enterprise organizations and helping them completely retool and transform into a customer-focused organization. So we'll talk more about that. That's good. Any other questions anybody has? Yes?
We have an issue where we are so customer success centric, but where our pricing is changing such that it's costing us a lot of money to continue to be so heavily involved. So how can you maintain customer success on the cheap?
At scale.
It's not horrible.
No, exactly.
How can you save yourself some money but still provide a level of service that really is part of your brand?
Yeah, really. And it's like, how do you scale customer success where your customers feel important and needed, but also you don't break the bank? Because it can be very, very expensive. We'll talk about that as well. So, question now.
My question would be, what are good ways to communicate learnings you found from the customers in customer success to engineers and product managers in a way that persuades them to take the customer's point of view?
I think you guys were like all part of my writing this whole presentation, because all your questions so far covered. So that's good. We'll talk about that as well. Great questions. Okay, one more. Yes.
So, I'm in customer success, and we also have annual services. And so annual services is billable and we're not billable. And so there's this weird line that nobody knows who owns that.
Yes.
How do you differentiate that in the company as far as annual services is kind of this path, but we're
So you're talking like managed service and then professional consulting services. Yes or no? Okay. Or even like free, like
we're free.
you're free. Okay.
Contact your customer success person, whatever your issue is, show me how to do this. And then somehow in between, we also have people, I guess, that get over into the annual services. And I think it's just who you happen to send your question or issue.
No, that's true, because and that's where we're going to talk a little bit about silos today, and a little bit about the trends that we're seeing with silos across an organization. I'm going to talk about that very thing of like, if you look at the company from the customer's point of view, what their experience is, and in different silos of the organization, like you guys have a mandate, and then the people who are working for professional paid services have a mandate, and then you may even have like customer support over here that has a mandate. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So, yeah. Okay, so now to get started, if my computer has not logged out on me because I talked too long. So let's see if we can get this to work. Aha, we're good. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the motion of customer success and why it's so important to us at Gainsight. I'm new to the company a little bit. I started in November of last year. My background has been in consulting and solutions and value engineering in the SaaS industry for like the past 6 years. And before that, I owned my own online business, so that was fun. And so when we look at the way that we view customer success and why we're so passionate about it. If you've ever had the opportunity to hear Nick speak, I highly recommend getting that opportunity because he's so passionate about it. He says it's a movement. It doesn't really matter what technology you use to do customer success, just being able to work to move your company to a more customer-focused and centric organization is really powerful. One of the things that we're seeing where we get really, really excited is by being able to put all the technology in one place, we can actually get data streams in, and our customers are actually seeing a 5% net retention rate on their churn rates, if that makes sense. So being able to save companies millions of dollars to the point where it just spreads across the organization, being able to look at that. And then even more important than this is the values of the company. One of the most passionate things they have at Gainsight is that we are a human-first company, and that translates through every level of our organization, meaning that teammate success is key. And I think that's one thing to remember if you want to be a customer-focused organization, is to really remember that when you take care of your teammates and your players and the people on your teams, that they will take care of your customers. And that's one thing that we forget is customer-facing resources, especially in technology, they get a lot of information all the time, and it's really hard for them to, if we're feeding them and taking care of them and making sure that they have what they need, that's going to come back to you more than tenfold for your customers. Why do we need customer success? Why is this so important, and why is technology so key in making this happen? If you look at it, disruption is everywhere. I mean, we are watching this, Uber and taxi cabs, and this is all going to seem like old news pretty soon. It's almost is already. But people are looking at the cloud, and they're wanting to be able to move everything to the cloud. They're also looking at social media because now customers are more empowered than ever before. I was in Florida one time. This is going to tell you guys a story. I got stuck in Key West, and we just started tweeting. I taught a whole bunch of senior citizens how to tweet to @Delta. And pretty soon TSA came and talked to me and told me I needed to leave the airport. But I didn't do anything bad, you know what I'm saying? But if you look at it, the voice of the customer is louder than ever, and they have more of an opportunity to speak. In fact, companies that they're predicting, do not adopt a more customer-centric focused organization and transform will actually be not really here anymore. Or if they are, they're going to be struggling. So as we look at this, we also look at subscriptions. And even if you're like an on-prem company or you're looking at different aspects of your business, we are starting to see more and more customers get focused on customer success that are also just regular companies. They're not all SaaS companies. And they're coming in and working with us based around the products that they're working on and how they can be more customer focused and gather data around those products to be able to help their customers be more successful. So when we look at this, back to, I think it was your comment, customer success is really about customer experience and then the outcomes that we can drive through that experience. Has anybody ever heard this definition before? Anybody? No? Okay, so if you look at it, we're really looking at being able to have a desired outcome because customers, really when they look at a product that they're going to acquire or technology or something that we go do we go do it because we want that product? We're going to do it because we want to have a desired outcome. And to kind of make this a little bit more real, we have this thing called being vulnerable at Gainsight. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of a story about how this became real for me. So I bought a drill one time. I was very proud that is my drill, actually. It's a really nice drill set. And I did this because I had built a house and I needed to put up drapes. And so when I acquired this drill, I was really excited because the guy said, this is the best one. You can use this. You'll use this like the rest of your life. And I'm like, great, I'll invest in the drill. Drill is really important. I knew there was a lot of things. I need to hang pictures. I need to hang my drapes. I need to do a lot of things. So I take it home and I start hanging up my drapes. And the next thing you know, I can't drill anywhere. I don't know if I've hit concrete. I don't know if I've hit metal, but the drill won't move. And I don't know what's going on. So I'm like, this product doesn't work. I don't know what I'm going to do. So the next thing I do is I go to Lowe's, and I'm looking at all the drill bits when this nice little man called Larry comes up and talks to me. And Larry says, what's the problem? Obviously, I look clueless. So he said, what are you trying to do? And I explained it to him. And then he said, 10 seconds. He just pulls down a drill bit. He said, whether it's concrete or metal, whatever you've got going on, take this home. This will do the job. $1.50 later, get home, drapes are hung, end of story. So what you see is, for me, it wasn't really about the drill. It was about, I wanted my house put together, right? And I wanted my drapes hung, and I wanted color and stuff in the room. That's what I was going for. That was the outcome that I had. So if we start thinking about things in the desired outcome that your customer has in using the product and the technology, I call it the sweet spot of where those two things intersect. So start really thinking about that, and then also thinking about the moments. That book that you guys, I think, is running around here somewhere this week about the customer success moments that you can create. Those moments are powerful, especially in the if you look at it in the overarching customer journey. So if you look at milestones and moments, what are the moments that your customers intersect with product, with people, and where are the stops along the journey, and what is their experience? That's where everything happens. So as we look at silos, someone was talking about silos, like how do we get everybody to align and agree? Most companies are built off of, we've got a marketing group. And what's marketing groups, what's their number one priority? What's the thing that they're driven by and measured by? Anybody want to shout it out? Lead gen, that's right. So marketing, they are on, like if we talk about the food that they need to eat at their table, they need leads, right? So then we go next and we've got sales. What drives sales? What's the food they need? ARR, yes, the magic 3-letter word. Wouldn't it be cool if it was like a 4-letter acronym or something? So, and then we look at services. That's the group I come from. What is services driven by? Margin, yes. Being able to make sure that, and then we're also driven by how do we make sure that we are completing our projects on time and on budget for not only us, but for our customers. And then also, are those customers successful? That's a big piece. And then you look at it from a support group. What is support always trying to do around a product? What feeds them? What metrics do they say, you guys are awesome if you do this? Satisfaction, CSAT scores, closing tickets. So they really have got to move that and close those tickets fast, because however long that ticket stays unresolved goes against them and counts against them. So think about that. From a product perspective, what is motivating product? They've got release cycles going on. They've got to keep everything going. What's the main thing for my product people in here that's driving you guys? What's the food on your table? Releasing product? Everybody's quiet. Yeah, you guys are tired. It's like the end of the last day, right? You guys it's all there. And then finance, of course, they want to just make sure the bills get paid. So how do we take this and unite people over the customer journey? Do you have a question or no? Okay. As you look at this, when we're looking at things from the customer's point of view, if you map a journey for your customer, whether it's a journey in the experience they have with your product, with your company, with the people in your company, and look at everything from their point of view. One of our biggest values at Gainsight is Shoshin, which means to have a beginner's mind. And so part of the thing that we actually do, since I'm newer to the organization, I came on board, they asked me to actually document and tell them things that I see from the beginner's mind. So what would happen if you guys were to approach and really cycle through your customer journey as a beginner? Not knowing everything you know from the kitchen, not knowing the recipes, not knowing how dirty the counters get every once in a while back in the kitchen as you're making everything up, but if you really approach it from their perspective. One of the biggest pieces of that is how do we incentivize all these groups from marketing to sales to services to support, and are they incentivized for a way that as they come together centered around your customers, that those customers can actually feel that great experience that they have? Because how many times do we have people coming up and like maybe there's a sales guy and he's commissioned only on ARR. You have a services person that's really trying to make sure that they get the right amount of services, but then the salesperson's a little bit concerned about the budget. Does that make sense? And then we look at the comms are, like our client outcomes manager, client success managers, you guys are looking at like the free. Do you get what I'm saying? Like we need to save this customer because I am charged with renewals. I need to get my renewals done. So we need to get some free services from professional services who's also concerned about their margin. So as you look at all these things together, it's really about gathering the data around your customers and knowing everything that you can about them to be able to have people work together in concert for a good outcome, if that makes sense. So that's kind of, as you look at things, just start And it's a motion that we're starting to see, and I think it's going to get more and more prescriptive as time goes on, that people will get better at this and faster. But even think about, as teams come together surrounding a customer, as they go through the sales process, what is their experience? How many times do they have to repeat themselves or tell their stories again, especially from onboarding and handoffs? So if we can go this way. Okay, so we talked about segments. How many people need to scale their customer success effort, and they're worried about budgets because we can only do so many accounts, right? Having been involved with customer success, when I was about 5 years ago, is actually when I started following Gainsight. I went to work for a company called Workfront, which is a great company. And we actually started, and back then customer success was so new. It was like, okay, make a call to this customer once a week. That was your job. And then you need to do an EBR, QBR, all these different things that you're going to do. And so I said, okay, that's great. But then I got handed 110 accounts. And so I started looking at what that meant. And so then we created I got the VP to give us a team, and we did an offsite. We actually created motions to be able to flag us on all the things we were supposed to be doing, much like the call to actions you'll see in Gainsight and the rules engines. And what happened was that we realized it was completely impossible to do everything they wanted us to do for all those accounts because we didn't have the time. And there was no way for us to follow up, because once we emailed, we got another email back, and then we'd have to send another email, and I was writing email for like 80% of my day. And so when we look at this from a segmentation perspective, it's really smart to start looking at your customers and where they're at in their business and the type of information and feedback that they need, and then segmenting your efforts and then using technology to help automate a lot of those efforts, because then you're seeing accounts where customers that I'm walking in, that they've got 5,000, or 1,000 customers per CSM, and it's really not, they're not touching them, but what they're doing is they're using technology to automate the touches so that the person gets what they need, and there's automated journeys of the customer. Actually, let me go back to this. The customer journey is so well orchestrated for that segment that is a low-touch segment that the information they need shows up to them when they need it based on automation. So that's really where you see the highest maturity from a customer success standpoint. So this is another thing I want to share with you. You guys are all like really good and quiet. I don't know if that's good. Maybe we should like stand up and do jumping jacks so everybody gets some more energy in the room. But as we look at this, from transforming the organization to a customer-focused organization, one of the things that we are seeing that we are so excited about after studying our customers is that customers often go through a journey when they decide to become customer-focused. And I think this is the same way with a lot of different technology. The first value that customers get, like if we looked at it as a value map or a value milestone, is generally product or visibility. So a lot of what technology can do for customers is just give them the visibility that they need so they can have insights and pull together things that they weren't ever able to pull together before. So as we look at that, that's one of the first things we have. Is our first step on the journey to transformation is insights and analytics. And then as we move forward, we look at outcomes. So once we have that insight and analytics, now what? Now what do? We need to make sure that we can automate things for customers and understand the different segments that they're in, and then also create their customer journey. And then from there, we go into full transformation, where we're really looking at much more automated touch. And then we actually see organizations in Gainsight, we're actually in the process of doing this right now internally, is every organization in the company, all those silos, is actually working inside our software. So we actually have, our services organization is in Gainsight with our own view of how the customer is based on the services relationship with them. Product has a similar thing that they're working on as well. And so as you see that kind of goes forward. So as we prescribe different elements, we have a very prescriptive approach to success. Now keep in mind, from a product management standpoint, the prescription of these elements is very tightly aligned to the functionality of product, but also because our product has been created based off of customer success best practices, it's aligned with best practices. So if people have the product or they don't have the product, there's still a lot of great stuff to have here, if that makes sense. But from a product perspective, we've actually aligned our elements to the best practices that we've seen in customer success. Now you'll see the elements up here that are highlighted, basically adoption management, case success, and product success are all elements that we use Pendo to actually, personally at Gainsight, to actually help support those efforts from a product perspective. So one of the things that we've learned, and I have some of my awesome product people in here too that I'm excited. So if we have questions, I put her on the spot. But as you look at it, we actually have our CSMs will actually go out and do chair sides, and they'll sit with our users and really understand where they're coming from, especially if you're having adoption challenges. Does anybody deal with customers that have adoption challenges? Change management for the win, yes. So we're looking at that, just being able to understand where they're coming from. What we found out is that many of the customers in chair sides, the end users were actually using the product, asking for features that already existed in the product because the admin didn't even have the time to train them, if that makes sense, which is very common in a lot of organizations. So what our product team did was they actually started looking at the ones that were most well done as far as the things that people are asking the most of, and then we built in the features, being able to look at the feature highlights and give them connections so they can learn within the product. And that's really helping drive adoption for our customers. The next thing is quick response to support. How many of you guys put out a product release and then support cases escalate to the ceiling very quickly? Sometimes, depending, especially if it's like a good release and people just know that things change and they weren't anticipating a change, even though you have been emailing them for 7 months, letting them know it's going to happen. So we always prepare for release day. But one of the great things that we've been able to do with Pendo is actually go through and in-app be able to have easy access to key documentation, and then being able to put those messages out there very quickly to our customers to let them know what's going on. It's been really powerful for us because we don't have to wait for a release to let people know what's going on in messaging in the solution. And then also being able to understand feature consumption. This is probably one of the most valuable pieces for us as we're looking at this from a product success perspective. Our product managers will actually go into Pendo and look at the different areas of the solution. And this is, we're always asking for product feedback. And before it was kind of this place where we kind of said, okay, how many of you CSMs have customers that use this area of the product? And everybody would be like, well, we think we have this group that might use it, or we've got this. And it's all kind of anecdotal. And by the time you go visit them, they kind of use it, but they're not really excited. There's just really that hit and miss type of a thing. Because of Pendo, we've actually been able to go in and understand exactly who our top users are of specific features. And then our product team was actually able to put together a users group specifically focused around those different features that we really wanted to work on in the product, which really gave our team some really great actionable results because we actually were able to target exactly the users who are using it the most and probably have the most knowledge on what they need to have out there. Another thing from a product usage perspective, from a customer success, is that one of the things that we're focusing on as an organization as a whole, and we're seeing a lot of our customers focus on, is looking at product feature usage, but then tying that back to a customer success, not only from a usage perspective, but also from a results and metrics. We're moving from a thing of, it used to be we could just go in and demo software and show people this is really cool software, it does this awesome thing. And the customer's like, okay, here's $1 million, you can have it. I want to buy that, I want it. And now it's more like, okay, give me a proof of concept, show me the value, what is the value, what is the value, what is the value? So as we look at this, being able to go in from a feature perspective and look at our customers. And so for example, if I implement a customer based on 7 of the elements I show you guys on that periodic table, being able to go in and measure what features they're actually using post-implementation and if that usage has actually gone up is a really powerful metric for my services consultants. Are people actually using the product in a way after they've been helped by services? And that really also helps us fine-tune our services methodology over time because we're going to know, looking at different features that we have that are used. The other thing that we'll see customers do is, for example, giving a customer showing them how, as we help them with a new process, that they, what they're actually doing in the product. People love having data on themselves. I don't know why. So 3 takeaways that I want you guys to remember from this is we have customer success is really a team sport. So when you guys are looking at this, I really believe the product people in here, you guys can have a key role, and you probably already do, in really leading a customer-focused, centric organization beyond just the product interviews, but really getting in touch with what the customer wants and being a huge part of their experience. The second takeaway would be that You can really use Pendo to do a lot of different things, a lot of different reasons. In fact, we have a lot of our customers that's one of the biggest data feeds they pull into Gainsight is their Pendo usage data and the different things that they're measuring inside Pendo, because it's a really helpful tool for them to understand a big piece of their customer health. And then also be agile. As you guys, and you probably already know this, but like as we started testing things, and we're still developing out what we're doing with Pendo as an organization, and I think that will continue to roll out from a best practice standpoint as we continue to kind of find out what works best for our teams, and then finding that data and being able to take more action on it. But it's really important to be agile because sometimes you'll have ideas and you'll go after them. And I always call it like the next step to value. And if that value isn't quite there or doesn't happen as much as you hope, it's really good to be able to agile and pivot away from it or go to a different iteration or figure out what you need to do. So any questions for me? There. Yes.
Can you, I know you don't want to pitch your software.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time understanding like what Gainsight does versus, where Pendo fits into Gainsight. If I'm not from your point of view, but from your user's point of view.
Definitely. Okay. So if I were to say these were all different customer, and I kind of want to just talk to you guys about customer success because I didn't want to sell you, if that makes sense. But just to give you an idea from how the technology, where that sweet spot is that if you look at customer success, these are motions that we are showing as best practices in customer success. And this is after years of working on this and being thought leaders. In fact, if I could recommend anything, I don't know if anybody in here is going to Pulse next month in April. Yay. Okay. Pulse is highly recommended. But then the other thing, there's a customer success podcast done by Allison Pickens where she's really interviewing top leaders in customer success on a regular basis. And then also we have great blog posts out there where Nick, our CEO, and Allison are sharing the things that they're learning on site with others as they're watching the trends happen. So those are two really good places to be as well. But as we look at the motions that you want to have in a healthy customer success organization, and this is really being like a customer-focused company, it's really about a platform where we're pulling in data. So just to give you an example from a use case perspective, when I'm working with a customer, one of the first things that they need to see is, for example, they have, let's just say, one product, right? One software product. And they want to be able to see in one place where all the support tickets are, how many support tickets they have they paid their bills? I mean, there's all these different things that we actually even have a data science team that works with our customers sometimes to be able to help them understand what metrics lead to churn and what metrics lead to people upselling and renewing so that we can start targeting those. So what the platform really does is really gives you the visibility to that data, pulling it all into one place. From there, we have things that happen. So for example, if you have a high touch segment and there's specific service things that you want to have happen with that organization, with that group, you actually will have Timeline, which is a central repository where we keep notes. And like, for example, I've met with 6 customers this week. I've never met them before. I was so busy this week. I've been traveling since like last Monday before this. And I was able to get into Timeline and review those customer Timeline notes in 15 minutes before a call and conduct scoping sessions where the customer's like, wow, I just am so amazed. How do you guys know our business so well? And it's because of Timeline. So really having that central repository of notes where your customer success manager, your sales team, those different groups, they can all be keeping notes on the customer and then also flagging risk and flagging where a customer is trending is really powerful, especially when you're looking at escalating risks and being on top of them very quickly. So that's one use case. So I could keep talking if I don't bore you guys. But the other thing I want to touch on is someone talked about how do you do things if you don't have a SaaS product. And one of the things that we're seeing, I think it's Jeffrey Moore came out and he wrote Crossing the Chasm, but he's talking about how the SaaS industry has completely changed everything, meaning that we're starting to see things trickle down into everyday organizations where if they're not customer focused and they don't become customer centric like a SaaS organization is, that they will not be in existence. I mean, it's like basically the thing is if we need to be, and people laugh at me, but I don't know, that's what they're telling us. So, but as you look at it, as customers, we know that people have more information on us than ever before. If I get in an Uber, They know my name. They talk to me. There's probably comments on things. I know today the Uber I got into, she was a poet, so I asked her about her poetry, But these are things that we know because of technology. So customers are expecting more, whether or not there's SaaS usage data, because this all started from like usage data, which is big. But the other pieces of it are sometimes we have customers that will measure marketing content. Are they engaging with webinars? Are they looking at our web pages? How often is someone from the company visiting, the website? Do we know who they are? So those are the pieces that you start, looking at different things and where customers are actually really starting to see an uptick in that. We also have customers that have on-prem products and non-prem products. Does that make sense? Yes. And so as we're looking at that, we do use cases around both, and then really looking at how we, look from a customer success perspective to be able to gather that data. And it's just going to be different data for different use cases, if that makes sense. But we are starting to see a huge uptick in that. The other thing that we're seeing from a use case perspective, platform, see if I can go back to this. Hey, there we go. Is as we're looking at, for example, the solution has automation around all of this. So for example, if all of a sudden my scorecard goes down and I had, 300 users logging in yesterday and I'm down to 2, it's going to pop up. We have another thing that if we don't engage with an executive on an account in 90 days, it pops up for a CTA to follow up and figure out where we're at, how we can get engaged with the customer. Does that make sense? So these are the type of things, and it's motions. It's really understanding your business and what this means to you, and then using the technology to automate that work and letting people know when to do things so they're not having to keep it all in their head, if that makes sense. The other one that people get really excited about are our co-pilot functionality, whereas you're looking to scale your customer success, really being able to, in all of these. So for example, if I know that I've got a customer that's getting ready to renew and I know I need to reach out to them and give them something, that my CSMs, they get into what they call the cockpit. That's an area of our product. And that day they know they need to email 7 people about the renewal, but the email pops up completely templated for them. And they can just change a couple of things and then send it out. So we've got very, very large enterprise organizations with customers using multiple product sets that they've been able to scale their customer success operations because of that, just because they're not spending as much time trying to be marketers and writing and doing a lot of different things. So that's a great question. Yeah. To churn. Oh, there's so many, and it depends. So tell me the context you're coming from.
So I come from customer success, and I'm primarily concerned with renewals. So
yes.
That's what I'm really driving to. And what metrics in renewal conversion lead to customer to renew or not?
No, great question. So one of the things I think that it used to be logins. People would just track logins, right? And one of the things that we're seeing is if you can get deeper data on the features and of what features they're actually using and who is using those features in an account, that's really helpful. The other thing that we see again is the executive engagement. That was a big one. And then it depends on how high touch or low touch the customer is. The other big piece that we're starting to see, because I think so many enterprise or even smaller businesses are in such a transformation phase, if that makes sense. We're seeing things are changing quickly. The reason executive engagement is such a key thing is because a lot of times situations or decisions are made above our champions level. And if we're not in tune with those initiatives that are going on in that organization and driving the bigger changes that it may not seem like it has anything to do with customer success or, our little software piece or whatever your software piece is, but it's that overarching change, is being able to engage those higher level groups to be able to be ready. And then also another thing that we do is watching executive sponsors in LinkedIn and our champions on LinkedIn. So we call it sponsor tracking. So if something changes with their job on LinkedIn, there's a little thing that will pop up, a call to action saying, hey, this person just changed companies and they're like your champions, so you probably should reach out to them. 1, to find out who the new person is, but 2, to figure out where are they going, because they obviously liked us a lot. Do they want us there? There's a lead for my sales team. So those are little things that we're doing. And again, it takes a salesperson doing hours and hours of work to do that manually. So it's really about using that technology to empower your people from things that we know could be indicative of that. So does that help? Okay. And then from a data science perspective, like I would tell you, like when we go into organizations, we look at the product, we look at the different data that you have, where it's all coming in, support tickets. It used to be that support tickets were like, if they have so many support tickets, they're going to have churn. No, it's not true. Sometimes you have an enterprise organization where they have lots of support tickets because people forget their password, right? So that's not a churn factor. So those are the big things, is like really starting to identify and being able to calculate that.
Like we found like a business week indicator.
Yes, yeah.
So that's like one. But when you're talking about high touch, low touch customers, that's interesting. Can you flesh that out a little bit more? Because I definitely know my customers who are high touch.
Yeah.
But the difference between the strategies approaching those two customers.
You bet. So as you're looking at high touch, we all know it's like the hands-on, you're my best friend, let's go to coffee, type of a high touch account. And then we get these accounts where we have like maybe one person to 1,000 accounts, or they're just really doing basically automated email. It's almost like looking at a customer and you're not going to have as much time to really call them all the time, right? So one of the things that we use the technology to do is, one, it's probably key to have your customer journey well mapped as to what the customer experience is for those customers. So if you look at a low-touch customer, and that takes time of going and sitting with those customers, doing share sides, understanding the challenges that their businesses have, really understanding the things that come up that do impact churn from those different types of customer segments. Because what impacts churn at a low-touch customer and what impacts churn at a high-touch customer can often be very different, and they move faster. So understanding what those are for your customers and looking back at your renewals and different things are churning to see kind of what the indicators were, if you can find any patterns in that, that's really helpful. Once you understand like the optimal customer journey and also like triggers for things that could indicate churn, it's really about mapping out that customer journey and then mapping out what that experience is. So for example, and this could even get as much as, we have some customers that if there is a specific usage in their product or someone pops up with something, that they'll have automatic rules to send an email to a specific person to let them know. Or if you have an admin, letting the admin know. So it's really about understanding what type of a journey you want to create and then using the technology to do that for you in a very automated way. So. Does that help? I mean, it's hard to kind of get really granular, because I can tell you, as you work with a customer from a consulting perspective, it's like it depends on what that means for your customer. And then what happens is you can also do A/B testing and iterate it over time. It's really like you're marketing, but you're marketing in a way that's more of a supporting marketing, if that makes supportive marketing, I guess is what I probably call it. So, yeah. It's interesting because we don't really talk about, we have planets, that's what we call them. They're like planets, and we don't talk about the planets in front of the customers. Do you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like I would say, having worked with a lot of SaaS companies, I've never been in a company that's much more focused, and I've seen us drop everything for a low-touch customer that's in need, if that makes sense. So it's like we have those segments, but then there are specific indicators that say this person may need a little bit more high touch for a while we're helping them with some issues. Like, there's a lot of our lower touch accounts that have massive turnover, or they get acquired, or different things that happen, and it helps for us to be able to have those CTAs that push it, and then being able to have a success plan created around the customer. So you're always going to have your segments, and it's key to have segments, but it's also key to be able to break the rules and be agile in the way you approach them. Does that make sense? And we don't tell them. I mean, they kind of know, but it's like not. I mean, they just basically, in fact, even from a services perspective, we approach services very similarly across the board for all of our customers. So, any questions on this? Any other questions? How much time do we have left?
20 minutes.
We have 20 minutes. I talk way too fast, you guys. Okay, so I'm trying to think of anything else you guys want to know. Any burning questions about customer success or Utah? I live in Utah, where the mountain snow was not very good this year. Anybody else? Okay. Yes.
So my question kind of still was around, if you have an organization that started with traditional marketing as a rich history, and now it's a SaaS product, and we have a SaaS product living inside of that company, assuming that you're pitching a culture of customer success to executive management who comes from a sales background for traditional product, what sort of things do you focus on in getting
It's a great question. So her question was, if you're working with an organization that is basically been a very traditional based product organization that now has one SaaS product, but I'm guessing a lot of executive leadership based on the old product mentality, how do you pitch the value of customer success to those executives? Great question. Lots of different ideas. I would definitely refer you to Allison Pickens' podcast, because there's ideas I could talk to you about for hours that we don't have time for here. But then also, and then the blog is very helpful as well. But if I were looking at it, what you're looking at is change. Okay, how do you create change in an organization? Because as we look at the shift from, the slides that I had of being the disruptive force, the reason they have a SaaS product is because they know it's the future. Okay, but then you've got people who've invested in their silos of being the way that they are. Does that make sense? So what you are trying to do is create change. So I always tell my customers when I consult with them that if you're looking at creating change, start where you know you can make a difference. And that means finding what's important to every single person that needs to change for that change to happen. So when you look at because we look at the big wide thing of we want everybody to be customer focused and invest in customer success. Sometimes if you're dealing with an executive team that doesn't know the value, sometimes you have to prove it out a little bit. So that could be starting small with one team, starting with it. In fact, I've got 3 customers right now that I'm working with that are very large enterprise organizations, and we've started with a very small team. And the value that they're seeing from that, they're understanding for the first time that they have data and insight they didn't have before. So now they're expanding to other products. And then we're basically mapping it out for that. But we had to show the value first, if that makes sense, for that small group. And then as you're approaching that small group, think about if you think about any significant change that's happened in your organization in the past 2 years, who were the change makers? Who are the people that lead the change and make things happen? Align yourselves with them, talk it out, see the different things, and then that's kind of where you start making a movement happen. So does that help at all? Okay. Another question somewhere? Yeah.
Customer segmentation.
Mm-hmm.
What have you found in your experience is the best sort of way to segment customers? Is it number of employees? Is it revenue of the company? Is it ACV of how they purchased against one of your products? What's the best way?
It's a great question. So I've seen it done all ways. Customers do it in different ways. Sometimes they'll segment by product. It just depends on how the culture. So look at the culture of your organization and how you service your customers. We actually have a lot of it. The employee count is a big piece that I see most people driving toward, just because when you're looking at an organization that has lower amounts of employees, they're going to have different needs. So you look at, for example, if I'm dealing with an enterprise organization like Cisco or Verizon, the approach that we'll have going into that and I'm talking from a services segmentation or even a customer success, is going to be a different approach with probably an Accenture or Deloitte versus I have a startup over here with 25 people and they're growing like crazy. They're getting ready to be acquired. How do I help them in the best way? So I think the employee count is what we generally see people doing. And then ARR is I've also seen segmentation done by ARR. One thing that you will always find is that there's always going to be exceptions to the segmentation rules. So that's always the fun and frustrating part of it all. In fact, from a services perspective, just to give you an idea, we had our services packages very slated to our startup type of companies to really be helpful. And then what we're finding in some cases with our customers is that in a lower employee organization, they actually want to spend more money on services because they need the help. It's easier for them to hire a consultant than it is for them to hire an employee. So from our perspective, that's been a really big learning in the segment. So it's really about being in those segments, making sure that whoever is, and this is a key one, you guys, whoever defines the segments in your organization and how you approach your customers needs to be having regular, ongoing face time with your customers. I've seen organizations where they've done segmentation and they have not been customer facing that much, and it's been a mess. So, or at least make sure the people who are really having a lot of time with the different segments are involved in that process. So, does that help? Yeah. Okay. Other question? Yeah.
Kind of going on with that, as you start to segment, you start to try and tailor
Yeah.
Big things if you try and say we're going to be high touch here, low touch here, that help you go that direction?
I think the first thing is getting all your data in one place. So just giving the CSMs and those who are customer facing, giving them the visibility to that information, if that makes sense, that is going to be key for you guys, if that makes sense. So as you're looking at, sorry, I'm going to drink some water because I've talked so much. Bear with me. There we go. That's much better. So as you're looking at your segments from a perspective of how do we approach them? No, tell me your question again. Sorry, I got distracted with water.
Basically, how to go from no segmentation.
No segmentation to segmentation. Thank you. Okay. So as you're looking at making your segments happen, the biggest thing that I always tell people is get the visibility first of being able to have the visibility of your customer data in one place. So understanding what is a healthy customer, what's not a healthy customer, and then applying that to your segments in the way that they're high touch, low touch, or medium touch. Now, what that also means is, in some respects, depending on those different segments, defining the customer journey for each segment. So if I am high touch, what does that mean? What does that mean for me from a support perspective? And then the other thing I would do is a lot of times we look at segments as just a customer segment in customer success. How does our CSM interact with that customer? I think it's really important, and we're going to see this more towards the future. It's great to do it in customer success, and that's probably one of the most important places we do it. But then also having that go across the life cycle journey. Whoever is a customer-facing person with that person, defining that entire customer journey and what that means for them in that segment. So, for example, if they're going to interface with product, how do we make sure that product is clued in on everything that's going on? Because if I'm a product person, I don't want to go out if there's 20 different support tickets on something that they hate. And, are we going to have a productive discussion? Maybe, but those are the things that you want to kind of be aware of. So I'd say the first step is really getting the visibility in one place, and then getting everybody to start having a central repository for your customers. But then the other thing is getting your team to look at their day and start understanding the way that they interact with their customers. So there's really, if you're going to implement technology that's going to automate, because people say, oh, we're going to have this call to action and it's going to tell someone to email someone or do this or do that, based on, okay, they just went down on logins, okay, here's the alarm, call them. Or whatever the automations are that we build. If no one has told the story to your people why you're doing that, no one's going to do it, and it's just going to all pile up because you're talking change in the way that people work, and that's probably one of the most sacred places in corporate America to go. So keep in mind, as you segment, be really clear on your why to your team, and then also be very clear on what that customer journey means. So from a technology perspective, when I see customers, again, it's the C360, but then they'll also go into the Copilot, the emails, really starting to look at the pieces of that journey that can be automated, and that can be, the technology can be used to scale the organization. So does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. It's hard. Everybody does it differently, so I will tell you that. So it's mainly about defining the customer journey and then deciding how you want to use the technology to do it. So any other questions? Yeah.
Your advice on taking a CSM role from a reactive type scenario to being proactive?
Yeah.
So, does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. I think this is the problem of all customer success organizations. So to be honest with you, 5 years ago when I started as a customer success manager at that company and we did that project, I went to my executives. This is where it's something you might be able to do, is I went to the executives and I said, look, 80% of my day right now is spent on support tickets that support doesn't have the time to respond to, right? Or they're closing because they have an SLA and the customer issue is not resolved. That was a huge issue. So what we learned is that, and I said, if you look at how much you pay a high-touch account person to do what I do, and then you look at what I could pay a tier 0 support person to answer a phone, right? To get the customers what they needed. Because one thing you'll see from a product maturity aspect, when I was with Workfront, we saw this over 4 years, is that customers, when you start building this up, the customers are in their journey of what they're doing, but they're not mature. And the maturity for the technology grows over time throughout the industry. It's really about that crossing the chasm journey that Jeffrey Moore talks about. So as we start moving forward in that journey, you're going to have areas where support's going to be huge for those customers starting out. So your CSMs become these reactive, like I'm your concierge type of thing, and they're never able to get strategic. So what we did is we actually formed a tier 0 group that actually answered the phone and did things like reset passwords. They would do things like helping them fill out their support ticket, because half of the issue was the people didn't know how to do a support ticket because no one had ever shown them, or they weren't at the implementation, so they didn't know how to do it. And then the other thing that we did was every CSM put in the bottom of their email a note that said, if you need, we have 24/7 support, call here type of a thing. And we had our salespeople do it as well. So that was a big piece to get the reactive work out of there. And then over time, really just training the customers. So when you have a welcome call with the CSM, training them on who the right people to go for are, giving them a document or an email, those type of things are really, really helpful, because if you think about it, as customers, we just want to know where to go, right? I mean, and how to get it answered. And if it's not getting answered the right way, escalating it through the right channels. So we actually went through a really painful piece where we actually had to let support escalate for not responding to tickets. Do you get what I'm saying? So we just had to escalate it for a little while. But then that eventually fixed itself because the organization had to go through the change of understanding how we do things now. So, and I've got 3 minutes. Okay, great question. Yeah.
Sort of on the same lines of segmentation, but we adopted a model 2 years ago that was first year customer success managers versus legacy. The definition is after their first renewal, they go into legacy, so their account per rep ratio for legacy is much higher than for a first year CSM. What's your experience with that? What's your take on that? Or not? Because we're evaluating.
So tell me, what happens with the second? So they have a first year that they have a first year CSM, and the second year on is called legacy. How do you treat your legacy different? Is it more high touch or low touch?
More automation.
More automation, less touch. Okay.
We did this because after having a data scientist, and we learned that our first year customers renewed at a significantly lower rate than our legacy customers. So our belief was if we could have a higher level of engagement in that first year,
Yes.
that we would increase our retention results because we have an annual subscription-based service.
Yeah.
And it's worked in certain segments.
Yes.
In some segments not. So we're trying to decide if it's
Okay.
the way to go.
No, that's great. And I do believe in first year customer focus. That's a personal belief of mine, because it's such a critical time for a customer. They're making a change. And I can't tell you how many times I've been part of a sales team that's gone in to help a customer from a consultative perspective leave another product in their first year. Because they're not happy. So I think that's a really key thing from a success standpoint is how do we make onboarding easy where customers feel like they're there. So I definitely agree with that. I worked with a company that we actually did a first year customer success experiment where we gave them unlimited services for the first year and unlimited whatever they needed for the first year. It was horrible. It was a total big disaster. But we knew that going in, but we did it in a way to help mature the customers, to get the customer base matured up, and also to learn and study our market of what we were dealing with from a customer perspective and what their needs were, and then also really building those relationships with them to scale across the organization into other different groups, if that makes sense, as with a different company. But as you're looking at those areas, I would say that I don't know that I would do so much low touch, high touch, because in my experience, and again, I'm not familiar with your product, because that's another piece, is if you've had a data scientist tell you that, you know that first year is key and critical. But in my experience, I would dive a little bit more into segmenting those legacy accounts, just due to the fact that those different segments will have different needs. And again, that all relates to how it relates to your product and the way people use your product. I was talking with a COO of a company, and their renewal rates, like no one breaks off of their company, like they don't ever churn. And his biggest issue is trying to get people to, as they come in to sign, being able to understand their business. But once they're in, they're basically in, because it's a healthcare type of product where they don't ever go. So I would say one of the things is segmentation is like this hot, trendy topic. It's really key to understand. And if you guys have had a data scientist in, that's really key. But also, I would start looking at that from a legacy perspective to see where those trends are are going after you change. Because if he's looking at data from when those accounts were kind of wherever they were in the segment before, how they were being treated before, that's where the data is okay, the way that they're being treated before. Moving them over here to a high touch segment or a low touch segment because their legacy, that's going to change his date. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So if they were keeping the same type of touch that they had here over here as legacy, perhaps you'll be fine. But that's one thing I would pay close attention to also. And the other thing to keep in mind is business is always changing. So that's, and when you're looking at customers from a growth, because everybody wants growth, next step to value. That's like a huge thing from a customer success perspective. Customers have an outcome that they want, like I wanted my drapes hung, but next thing you know, I might want to remodel my bathroom, right? So like that's those different things that happen is like being able to be in touch with your customer enough to know when that happens, either through automated tech touch or through, high touch. So, okay, we're good. Time is up. So thank you guys so much for spending time here and good luck.